common theme that I see within discussions of TF2 weapons is how quick people are to write off a lot of things as garbage. I know the game's meta has pretty much been figured out by now due to the lack of balance changes, but I'm still surprised at the sheer amount of players I see hating on weapons that, while they may not be the best possible choice for the class, are still really solid in their own respects. So while I work on other projects, I wanted to do a quick little video giving my personal opinion on the quote-unquote bad weapons that I personally think a lot of people are sleeping on. And yes, I'll get it out of the way now that this is from my perspective as somebody who mostly plays casual and community servers, so if you're more inclined with the competitive side of things, you're probably going to disagree with a lot of my takes. Anyway, while I could sit here all day and talk about every weapon that's better than people assume, I'll keep it simple and do a single pick for each class. Starting with the Scout, a weapon that I constantly see people calling bad is the shortstop. Now I get it. The thing that Scout excels at is getting up in people's faces and doing dummy high damage with constant meat shots, but the shortstop definitely doesn't do as well. And yeah, the shove function on the weapon is completely useless and never should have been added in the first place, but when you consider how good the shortstop is at mid-range, along with its deceptively high DPS at point blank, you end up with a weapon that's surprisingly versatile, at least more so than people assume. But the main reason that I think this is one of Scout's better scatterguns once you learn how to use it is the fact that it lets you deal with several classes that otherwise give you a lot of trouble. Direct hits, pyros, sentries, and occasionally demos, four of your biggest headaches as Scout, become significantly easier to take down when you're able to engage them safely from mid-range. However, there is one instance where I think the shortstop actually is comparable if not better than stock, and that's when you have a constant supply of crits available. The only situation in vanilla where this ends up being the case is in Halloween maps, since enemies drop crit pumpkins when killed, but even on teams running the buff banner and the crits creek, this thing puts in a lot of work. So sure, this thing may not be as effective as stock when used exactly like it, but the amount of things you can do with it makes it worth learning, and it's a pretty fun alternative playstyle for Scout once you get the feel for it. For Soldier, there are a few weapons that are considered way worse than they actually are, but I think the biggest offender for this is the Liberty Launcher. The main weakness of the Liberty Launcher is the damage, which definitely hurts on a weapon type that's supposed to excel at damage, but the Liberty Launcher has quite a few quality of life stats that makes it amazing with specific loadouts. The reduced damage from rocket jumping lets you have considerably more mobility when running a shotgun or a banner. The increased projectile speed lets you have an easier time hitting fast targets and pyros since they have less time to react to your shots, and the extra rocket is good in really about any situation. The damage penalty definitely hurts, and it really does hold the Liberty Launcher back from being a true side grade, but the amount of extra stuff it has packed in makes it my go-to primary to pair with the Market Gardener and the buff banner, since like the shortstop, this thing does arguably better than stock when there's a large supply of crits or mini crits available. For Pyro, the class that I have the most experience with, there are quite a few things that you could put here since nobody really understands what's good or bad on Pyro. The weapon that I'll personally pick though is the Extinguisher due to the high damage you can deal with this thing. There is not really much else to say about this one other than high damage is good. Everyone always says that Pyro isn't supposed to use his melee for combat since the flamethrower and the shotgun do close range combat better, and while I would probably agree with that sentiment in most cases, the Extinguisher is extremely effective at ending fights more quickly than you otherwise would be able to. When you pair this with the Degreaser, which is arguably Pyro's best primary anyway, you can kill most classes before they're even able to react, which isn't something that can be said about WM1 alone. Also, the speed on kill stat allows you to get away efficiently after ambushing someone, which is always nice. So sure, the Extinguisher doesn't have any other utility than raw damage, but a lot of people assume that it sucks because of that, when in reality it can be a lot of fun when used properly. Demo is a kind of hard one since he doesn't really have any weapons that are generally considered bad, but because someone told me to switch off the Scottish Resistance yesterday because it sucks, I'm putting that one here out of pure spite for that guy. The Scottish Resistance is a weapon that becomes exponentially more powerful the smarter you are. If you're a complete brainlet and can only comprehend sticky spamming, then yeah, this thing probably isn't going to get you very far. But if you have a Jimmy Neutron level IQ and can figure out the cheesiest possible spots to put stacks of bombs on every part of every map, you become almost untouchable. The amount of strategies this thing opens up is frankly insane, but my personal favorite is to bait people into sticky traps by placing 2 stickies in obvious spots, and when those inevitably blow up at the wrong time, people like to charge right into the other stickies I put right around the corner. Oh, this also counters Uber charges if you put all 14 stickies in a bush and the medic walks over it. And I suppose if you really get into a pinch with it, you can carpet the entire area in front of you with sticky bombs thanks to its faster firing speeds. That's something, I guess. Well, I'm well aware that most of these dumb strategies probably wouldn't work more than once against good players. This thing can completely dominate pubs if you use it right, with the added benefit of making you feel like a super genius every time one of your strategies works. For Heavy, I don't know, I don't really play Heavy because he's boring. But when I do play Heavy, I like to meme around with the killing gloves of boxing. I know they don't help you move faster or take less damage, but it takes exactly one random crit to have a crit boosted Tommy Slav for 5 seconds. I really don't understand why more people don't like this. Engineer is a tough one since he doesn't really have anything that fits into the concept of this video, but if I had to give the title to anything, it would probably be the Eureka effect. On top of turning your teleporter exit into a resupply cabinet, this enables a lot of really stupid strategies, kind of like the Scottish Resistance. The strategies with the Eureka effect don't work as well though, because unlike Demo, this actually slows down your ability to set up elaborate traps instead of speeding it up. I suppose that's for balance reasons, as being able to resupply literally whenever you want with a push of a button is pretty powerful, but yeah, it's still kind of sucks not being able to set up a sentry instantaneously behind the entire enemy team. For medic, my pick is easily the Blitzauger. So many people assume that all of the primaries that aren't the crossbow are bad by default. But to that I say, try out Class Wars at some point. You're very quickly going to see how dumb the Blitzauger is when you're forced to use it. If you can hit most of your shots, which I'll admit isn't easy, but it's definitely doable with some practice, you can heal up to 30 damage per second on top of your native health regen. And this is combined with the fact that syringes actually have deceptively good damage once you learn how to aim the projectiles, meaning that this thing allows good medics to consistently win a lot of otherwise difficult 1v1s. Now, does this mean that it's as good as the crossbow? No, it's not even close. But as far as supposedly bad weapons go, you could certainly do a whole lot worse than the Blitzauger. Now we get to Sniper, which is where my opinions start to get, controversial to say the least. You know what? I'm just gonna come out and say it. I think the Sydney Sleeper is okay, even if it requires you to fully charge shots before it can be useful. Now sure, maybe you could do basically the same thing by quickscoping with other rifles, but the Sleeper is an amazing squishy deleter. The extra charge time allows you to one-shot body shot light classes and medics, which even though is redundant in theory since headshotting is faster, you have a lot more leniency with where you actually have to hit your targets to kill them. And even if you're the best sniper in the world and never miss a headshot, there will be situations where you can only see people's lower body, so shooting people's pinky toe off and causing them to die instantly is another benefit of this weapon. I definitely would not go as far as to call the Sydney Sleeper good in many respects, but its ability to efficiently kill anyone under 150 health without the insane precision needed to hit headshots on fast targets makes it at least pretty alright. Plus it can also extinguish teammates at long range, which can occasionally come in handy. And finally for the Spy, I'll give the title of best bad weapon to the Enforcer, since people really like to sleep on the damage of this thing. Now despite saying this, I still agree with most people that the Enforcer is the worst revolver, but that doesn't necessarily make it a bad revolver by any means. The damage is still pretty comparable to stock, the only difference being a slightly slower firing speed, which is great in its own right. The resistance piercing doesn't come into effect that often, but it really makes a difference when it does, specifically against Wrangler engineers, and the disguised damage bonus does allow you to insta-kill light classes whenever you have crits, so that's also fun. Again, I wouldn't argue against this being Spy's worst primary, but the gap between the Enforcer and the other revolvers is not anywhere to as close to as big as people assume it is. So yeah, those are my personal favorite weapons that are honestly a lot better than people have been led to think. If you're of the opinion that any of these weapons are actually good and didn't realize that most people find them bad, then I mean, hey, welcome to the club. I know there isn't really a general consensus people have on a couple of these, but a lot of people I've spoken to genuinely think these weapons are bad just because they aren't on par with stock. And also, yes, like I mentioned in the beginning, this is my opinion from a mainly casual standpoint. If you're a competitive player and you disagree with these, you can go cry about it. Though to be fair, if I were a competitive player, I would probably disagree with all of these too, so fair's fair. So yeah, if you're wondering what happened to my normally creative video ideas, this is a fun little side project while I gather a metric crap ton of data for the other ones. That being said, if you like my takes on topics that have been done to death, I would certainly like to know. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like. If you hated this video, your opinion isn't valid until you beat me in checkers, and most importantly, have a good one.